Like, we all want to be tough guys. We all want to be, I'm the toughest guy in the gym, noses across their face, and they still want to spar. All these injuries catch up with you at the end of your career, you know? I wake up every day and I'm like, hands ache, my back aches, you know, my jaw aches from being dislocated and not resting. Like, I dislocated my jaw and I was straight into training the next week sparring. And it's just silly. Like, I'm just biting down on my mouth guard to try and keep my jaw in place. You know, something that I feel would be really useful for him. And I've seen him do it a little bit in his career, but working to the body, you know? Because heavyweights have got big power, they always think one big punch to the head. And a lot of these heavyweights, they wouldn't take those shots to the body from Ivanov. I feel like that would be a big improvement in his game. He's shorter, he can get close, like Mike Tyson, get close to these guys, start working those body shots, and we'll see some big guys just hitting the floor because they can't breathe.
Добре дошли в спортната джунгла. Соги Георгиев.
Легендарният ММА боец и коментатор Дан Харди е следващият гост в спортната джунгла. Бившият претендент за титлата на UFC ще даде ценен съвет на Благой Иванов и ще сподели дали Багата може да се завърне в PFL, където преди години беше шампион. Born Winner вече навлиза на европейските и световни пазари. Ако все още не сте опитали от техните протеинови барове, може да го направите на онлайн магазина им. Адресът е долу в описанието. Колко голям е потенциалът на Дакота Дичева и защо непобедената състезателка от български произход има всички шансове да се превърне в суперзвезда. Ще чуем оценката на Дан Харди, който наскоро стана изпълнителен директор на PFL Europe и отговаря за почти всичко в организацията. Ако харесвате вкусна и здравословна храна, заповядайте в ресторантите на нашите приятели Arnold Foods. Адресите на техните обекти може да намерите долу в описанието. Какво търси Дан Харди в бойците, за да подпише с тях в PFL Europe? Какво трябва да притежава всеки един български състезател, който би искал да достигне на това ниво? Ще чуем от Дан Харди, който ще ни сподели и каква е причината да се раздели с UFC. Ако това видео ви харесва, дайте едно лайкче, абонирайте се за YouTube канал Спортната джунгла и задължително натиснете камбанката, за да получавате известия за всеки нов клип. В нашите социални мрежи Facebook и Instagram може да намерите интересни новини от света на бойните спортове. Отскоро имаме нов TikTok канал, както и нов YouTube Short канал The Jungle of Inspiration. Очаквам долу в коментарите вашето мнение. Кой български боец има качествата, за да бъде част от PFL Europe? Приятно гледане! Dan Hardi, the outlaw, right now the head of operation of PFL Europe. How your life changed after taking such a position that seems to took too much from you because you are everywhere around here?
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge because I'm commentating the events as well, so I've got to do all my research and preparation, but then I'm here making sure the fighters are on weight and signing contracts, and there are so many things involved in putting on a PFL event that you know, it's good for me, it's interesting for me to be across everything, but I have to, it's a good challenge for my memory, for my brain, you know. Keep me focused on all the different tasks and making sure the fighters are looked after, they've got what they need. You know, we had rehydration stuff today after the weigh-ins, so all the fighters are getting electrolytes and, you know, organising their schedules and everything. It's, you know, it's a pleasure to do, it really is, I enjoy doing it. But at the same time, there's a lot to remember.
You're also doing the matchmaking of the events. How different is that kind of matchmaking than the one when you were a fighter, when you were a cornerman? Do you add something that could bring more exciting fights to the fans?
Yeah, what I'm looking for most is fights that are 50-50 competitive. I want every person to step into the PFL Smart Cage and feel like they're matched against an opponent that everybody feels that they can beat if they're on their game. Like, one of the fights that's most interesting for me is Conor Hughes against Dylan Tuke. Like, we interviewed them both yesterday and I asked them both the same question, you know, if you fought 10 times, how many times would you win? And they both said 10 times out of 10 we beat each other. So they're the kind of fights that I want to create. Sometimes you get a fighter, he looks at his opponent, he goes, wow, this is gonna be a tough fight. They're not that confident. I like even matchups where either fighter can win. That's the thing I'm looking forward to most and looking for the most when I'm signing fighters. Because I wanna make sure that everybody in the 8-person bracket, no matter what weight class, every single person has the opportunity to win that $100,000 at the end of the year. And for me, that's the most interesting. As an MMA fan, you just want to sit and watch the event and see how it plays out. You know, I don't want to feel like I kind of know who's going to win. I want to be surprised just like all the rest of the fans. So my goal as a matchmaker is to make fights that I want to see as a fan and that the fighters are going to look forward to because they both feel confident they can win.
I'm sure many Bulgarian fighters are going to watch this interview. So what you are looking in a fighter to sign him to PFL?
The most important thing for me is the last 3 fights. That's what I'm looking for most, because last 1 fight is good. If they have a really good performance in their last fight, that's good, but I want to see consistency. Because these guys, you know, the guys that weighed in today, they've got 3 fights before the end of the year. And if I'm seeing guys that win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1, and there's no consistency, I don't feel like they're the right level for a competition like this. Like all of these guys in these brackets are consistent fighters. They improve consistently, they get better consistently, and they're winning fights consistently as well. So for all the Bulgarian fighters out there, your last 3 wins. I'm not bothered about losses. I don't mind, you know, people picking up losses in their career. It doesn't bother me. If someone's 8-8 and they're on a 6-fight win streak, I'll consider them. You know, it's most important is the last 3 fights consistency.
Dakota Dичева, who is half Bulgarian, half English, so you and me together we could cheer for her for the future. What do you think for her? Do you think that she's got the X factor to become a big star?
I think she has. I think she's already becoming a big star. You know, people around the world in different gyms are talking about her, you know, as with the potential that she has. You know, of course, there are tough fighters in this weight class, other undefeated fighters, you know, really experienced fighters like Gret, you know, she's got a lot of fights. But at the same time, Dakota's got experience in Muay Thai, she stepped over into mixed martial arts and she's adapted her game very well. And you know, she trains hard. I know her strength and conditioning coach, and he talks about how strong and dedicated she is. She's big for the weight class as well, long reach, you know. I think she has all the potential in the world. And I think, you know, if she's able to get through to the finals in Dublin and win this year, I feel like she'll be moving on to the global roster, and then we'll have flyweight at, you know, on the world level for the $1 million as well.
What is the most important thing in this stage of her career? What she needs to improve, or maybe to handle the pressure, because she's starting to go up and up at the card. The last time she was co-main event, so probably she could be a main eventer soon.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. She's, you know, she is a star in the making. We can see that, and you know, Newcastle was a good experience for her because she was co-main event. She had lots and lots of interviews to do. It was a different fight week to normal. Normal, she would be there, focus on the fight, maybe do 1 or 2 interviews, but Newcastle was busy. Everybody wants to talk to her. And the reality is, it's part of the job. The more she wins, the more she's successful, the more people are going to want to ask her questions. So it's something that she has to get used to doing, but you know, not jumping straight into a main event and taking the whole show on herself. Co-main event was a good position for her. We'll see where she's on the card for Paris. We've not set that yet, but I think no matter where she is on the card, she's going to get lots of attention from the media and the fans. And I think by the time she steps into a main event position, she'll be ready to take the whole weight of the show.
There was a change in the draw of flyweight tournament. She went to fight another Swedish girl instead of fighting the winner of the fight which will take place in Berlin. What was the reason for that?
The reason for this is primarily because of the rules and restrictions around matchmaking in France. That there are certain rules around the matchmaking. Certain fighters can't take on other fighters based on their record. So the reason why Dakota's been matched with Cornelia is because they're of a similar competitive level. You know, Cornelia Holm is a very, very tough opponent. She came through IMAF. She was a good amateur, and she's a very, very tough professional fighter. She's taken risks. She's picked up some losses. But as I said, I'm only interested in the last 3 performances. And her last performance was, I mean, she took a big head kick. She came back and she won the fight by decision. I feel like that's the right test for Dacota next, and I feel like Cornelia needs a test like Dacota as well. You know, someone that is undefeated, that, you know, people are expecting to do well, because Cornelia has the skills to beat her. You know, she's a good grappler, she takes a shot very well, she's got experience in MMA, she's very smart, she's very intelligent, and I think that, you know, she knows what to expect from Dacota. She's primarily a striker, but now we've seen some grappling as well. I think it's a really interesting fight, and we'll see who else moves through to the next bracket from the fights this weekend. But the women's flyweight division, I'm ready for some surprises. I think we've got some fighters in that division that could surprise us in Paris.
And you're a specialist in women flyweight division because your wife is fighting there. We are going to watch the next fight of Dacota in September in Paris on the Zone. I would like to ask you about the other famous Bulgarian MMA fighter, Благой Иванов. He's fighting in UFC. He just lost the second fight in a row against Alexander Romanov. What do you think about his performances recently?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Благой. I feel like his style it's an easy style to be a fan of. You know, he's a very, very good striker. He's small for the weight class, which means he has to use his mind, and he's very intelligent. You can see how he manages the space between him and his opponent and makes them do the work to come close to him, because he has really, really heavy hands. You know, if he's chasing these guys, he's going to struggle to reach them, but he knows this. He plays the game very well, and I feel like, you know, I would watch him fight every weekend. You know, he's that kind of opponent. You know, he's that kind of competitor. We'll see where he's at. Maybe one day we can get him back to the PFL for another couple of fights.
Yeah, he's a former champion, but what do you think he needs to improve? Because he is making exciting fights, he's ready to strike, but recently he's got some problems. He couldn't win in his last two fights.
You know, I think he's going to take the lessons from these fights. You know, the thing is, because he's dealing with guys that are much bigger, you know, much more powerful sometimes, he has to be very smart about the way that he takes these opponents on. You know, something that I feel would be really useful for him, and I've seen him do it a little bit in his career, but working to the body, you know, because heavyweights have got big power, they always think one big punch to the head. And a lot of these heavyweights, they wouldn't take those shots to the body from Ivanov. I feel like that would be a big improvement in his game. He's shorter, he can get close, like Mike Tyson, get close to these guys, start working those body shots, and we'll see some big guys just hitting the floor because they can't breathe.
Maybe someday you and him could join forces, as you said. Staying on promotional level, do you have some extra motivation to kick UFC's ass after the way they handled the situation with you? You spent so many years with loyal dedication for them, and at the end it was not so nice the way they did with you.
You know, it was unfortunate, but my focus is really mixed martial arts, and the reason why I had the issues with the UFC is because I would speak up for mixed martial arts, you know, even if it was not in line with what the UFC wanted. You know, when we see referees that aren't doing their job, I see things behind the scenes that I'm not comfortable with, I have to say something, because I love the UFC, but I have to protect mixed martial arts because we're still a young sport, right? And this is why this job is great for me, because I have an opportunity here to, you know, help curate the sport in Europe and help protect these fighters as they're going through their career, and then pass them on to the global roster for PFL, where I know they're going to be looked after. And that for me is the most important. That's why we brought the rehydration protocol in today, because I want to make sure these fighters are health and safety to compete. That's my main priority. I love the UFC, I'll always be a UFC fan. You know, my wife's on the UFC roster and we're going to kick some ass and get one of their belts. But, you know, I have nothing against the UFC. The UFC as a brand has done amazing things for mixed martial arts, and I'll always be thankful for my opportunities. And ultimately, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys if it wasn't for the UFC signing me and then giving me the opportunity to commentate as well. This is when I really realised what my goal is in mixed martial arts. It's to help protect the sport and to educate the fans so they understand how great these fighters are. Your
breakdowns are second to none. I would like to bring you back. You said UFC gave you a lot. UFC 111, maybe the most memorable fight night in your life. It wasn't your best night, but right now, with all your knowledge that you have, what would you change in that fight with Джордж Сейнт Пиер? And do you think that you could be capable to beat him if you change some small things in that fight?
I was confident that because at the end of my career, I got 2 wins, and then my plan was 2013, I was going to start preparing for another title shot. And I felt confident that I would be able to do a lot better in the next fight. I mean, GSP is one of the best of all time. It was a good lesson for me to fight him, and then I trained with him afterwards. I helped him to prepare for Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit. And you know, in those training sessions, I felt like they were more fun because they were more relaxed, and he was better at striking and I was better at wrestling because we were a little bit more relaxed. On fight night, I was just too tense. And I remember thinking to myself, fight week, everyone that fights GSP, they wait to throw their best punch because he's going to take them down. And then they don't throw any punches. They just stand there and wait. And I said, there's no way I'll do the same thing. And for 25 minutes, or for as long as I was on my feet, I was holding back and waiting. I wouldn't do that next time. I'd just let my hands go, because I know that if I would have hit him with something, I could hurt him. But ultimately, I would have to work on my wrestling more. And you know, it's difficult, especially when someone's been a champion for so long. They make good money. They spend a lot of money on their training camps. They bring lots of training partners in. So I didn't have the money to have a good training camp to prepare for him. And now I would be better prepared. I would be much better prepared.
Your career ended because of a health problem, but as I remember, you were cleared 4 or 5 years ago. There were many rumors that you could come back. I remember the last one was fighting Tyron Woodley last year.
Yep.
Why you never came back?
Well, I kept speaking with the UFC, and they offered me some fights. They offered me, because I was going to move down to 155, they offered me Joe Lozon, and I didn't want to fight Joe. They offered me Gilbert Melendez, and I said yes, I would like that fight. They offered me Jim Miller, and I said I would think about it, but I would like someone that was going to try and knock me out. And then before anything was organised, I parted ways with the UFC. And the truth is, I mean, it always felt like they wanted me in commentary because they can use me all the time then. I can do Inside the Octagon and the breakdown shows, and I can be on commentary every month. Whereas if I was fighting, they would lose me for 3 months, and I always felt like they didn't really want me to do that. And then when I left the UFC, I started talking with other promotions, and I had a couple of offers through. Tyron Woodley had 2 contracts sent to him to sign for boxing, and he didn't sign either of them. And then we agreed to fight Diego Sanchez in boxing, and then the event was cancelled. So it's almost like the universe is telling me to stop and to retire. But I'm very stubborn, and if there's a fight in the future that makes sense, I will still fight, because I'm still training all the time. I still feel healthy. I'm 41, but I've looked after myself, and I feel like I wouldn't be affected too much by the weight, the weight to get back in there. So we'll see. I don't think I'll ever retire.
When I did the interview with Dakota Dичева, she told me that you tried her best to bring PFL in Bulgaria. And after that interview, many people in Bulgaria asked me how this could happen, because we are not the biggest market in Europe. But would you tell us, what are the chances PFL come to Bulgaria?
I think eventually we'll go all around the world. There's lots of different regions of the world that we have on the list to go to, and that list is growing all the time. Ultimately, right now this year, PFL Europe have 4 shows, but I want to be increasing that amount, very, very quickly. So soon we'll have a standard 12 fights every year in Europe, and we're going to be moving around to different places. And if we have stars in Bulgaria, Dakota in the main event over there would be good. If we sign, Ivanov at some point, he'd be great. And then I don't know who's in Bulgaria that's a superstar. We haven't found them yet, but when we do, we'll take a card there. I want to take PFL to everywhere in Europe, and I want to make sure that the fans can afford the tickets and they can come and watch these fights live.
Last thing, in our YouTube channel, The Jungle of Sports, we've got something like a tradition. Our guests to say motivational words to the next generation, all those boys and girls who are looking at the legends like you, and they would like to be like you, champions in sport and in life.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. Look, winning fights, being successful in mixed martial arts is about making good decisions every day. Sometimes people get so focused on the fights in 8 weeks' time, and they get so focused on that they lose track of the days, right? Make good decisions every day. Enjoy every day as much as you can when you're training. Like, you don't want to look back and think to yourself, well, that whole training camp was horrible, I was miserable the whole time. Like, find ways to enjoy the process, no matter whether it's the people you train with or the music you listen to or the gloves you wear when you spar. There are lots of different things that I used to get excited for. That's why I've got so many gloves. Buy new gloves, make me excited about using them. And ultimately, you know, look after yourself. This is something that fighters are now just starting to realize. Don't cut too much weight. When you do cut weight, make sure you rehydrate properly. If you're injured, rest, get the injury fixed. Don't train through pain. Like, we all want to be tough guys. We all want to be, I'm the toughest guy in the gym, noses across their face, and they still want to spar. All these injuries catch up with you at the end of your career. You know, I wake up every day and I'm like, hands ache, my back aches, you know, my jaw aches from being dislocated and not resting. Like, I dislocated my jaw and I was straight into training the next week sparring. And it's just silly. Like, I'm just biting down on my mouth guard to try and keep my jaw in place. Like, at the time it made sense because I've got to keep going, I need to fight. But I look back now and I think I could have taken 6 weeks rest and I would have been so much healthier. And maybe I wouldn't have these problems now with my jaw, you know? You don't want to get to the end of your career and then just fall apart, right? You want to get to the end of your career and go on to other careers and be involved in the sport, get into judging or refereeing or coaching or whatever. You've got to look after yourself. You know, there's life after mixed martial arts, and your life in mixed martial arts will be better if you take care of those injuries.
Dan Hardi, thank you very much, sir, for this exciting interview, and you are always welcome in Bulgaria.
Thank you. I will definitely come to Bulgaria and see you guys one day.